Hello there, Bible 12. Happy Mother's Day, or happy belated Mother's Day, for all of you Bible 12ian mothers in the house. If you guys haven't had a chance to yet, you'll be working on a warm-up today, one little discussion about needy boyfriends and girlfriends, and then how to find a spouse by the end. A couple of things. Oh, that's not correct. Projects aren't due tonight. I'll delete that. But your marriage project interview is due by Wednesday, and then also on Wednesday we'll have like a final assessment. It's not a final, but we'll have one more assessment where it'll actually be kind of short and just ask you a few key questions that if you've been paying attention and present all semester, then you'll be like, oh, that's super easy. We literally talked about that 1,800 times. So that'll also be on Wednesday. So let's dive into the material for the day. So normally this whole modesty conversation is a lot more discussion based, but clearly in this format it's a little bit more difficult. So I've tried to have discussions and assignments where there's points and counterpoints to walk you through this, but this is kind of like the closing of that how not to find a spouse is through sex appeal. And then through that, you guys have done some good reading so far on the modesty topic, the Rachel Held Evans and Felicia Delta. So here's the kind of one of the closing points. What should be taken into consideration when we decide what we wear? According to a Christian perspective, what are 3 things a person should or should not consider? Now, I know that clothing is only like a portion of the picture, but I feel like clothing is like the easiest thing it's the easiest like behavior that we can modify when it comes to what we physically display into the external world, right? Because it's something that we literally like buy and put on our bodies. So what should be taken into consideration? What shouldn't, if you're a follower of Jesus, in your opinion? Come up with at least 3 of those things. So have a good conversation about this in that discussion post. And here's how I'll go ahead and wrap it up. I think that usually in reading the 2 articles, That Day I Wore Yoga Pants and Modesty, I don't think it means what you think it means. Usually one of those 2 articles, depending on your upbringing, depending on your perspective on what modesty even is, one of those stands out to people more than the other, as ringing as more true. But you'll notice that both of them quoted that text in Timothy, and both of them talk about modesty and refer to scripture and talk about being clothed in dignity. And so I think it just shows that when it comes to an issue like modesty, so much of it is culturally bound. And so this isn't to dismiss it, because I think sometimes in Christianity, we look for the timeless truth that doesn't have anything to do with any culture, but it's true no matter what. And we love our objective definitions and things. But Jesus, when he came to earth, he showed up in a culture where there were people who had ideas about how people should dress and eat and do things. He came into a culture and then worked with that. And so this is, it's kind of incumbent upon us as Christians to then do a similar thing and be like, okay, this is the culture we live in. What do we do with it? There's that chunk in Rachel Held Evans' article where she talks about how depending on the culture you're in, like what could be considered modest or immodest is widely variable. In certain Indian parts of Indian culture, like it would be totally fine to show your midriff, right? Like that's totally acceptable and not immodest at all in that culture. But it would be immodest to show your knees. That in fact would be scandalous. And so like some of our like dress code rules might seem nonsensical in a different country with a different cultural context. So, here is what I would say is like my take home points, from this conversation, is 1, as always, know yourself. Know, like, what are the things that you struggle with? What are the things that you deepest, like the things that we talked about in that little chunk when we did that, like talking about personality types and things, and you know what is your deepest drive, your deepest fear, your deepest longing, like know that stuff. Because if you know that stuff, then you'll be more equipped to know why you do things, including what you do with your bodies. So it's not enough to say, like, I dress for me. Because like there's so many different facets that get fed into that. Like maybe you were told that like your value is based upon like how much people are attracted to you. And if that's the case, like know yourself enough to know that that's real. And then you can know your motives behind why you do the things that you do. Right? Or maybe it's the opposite, like in Rachel Held Evans' case, where like you feel shame, and because of that shame, you do the opposite and you try to hide. But like both of those are contrary to what God intended and has for us. And so, know yourself, know why you do things, and then if there's any shred of darkness in it, then rethink it. Right? If you are using your clothing or your body or your physicality in any way that has like darkness in it, it's manipulative, it's coercive, it's whatever it is, like if you're using it in that way, like rethink it and submit it to Jesus and say, hey Jesus, is this the decision I should make? Invite the Holy Spirit into that process. I would say that like even these things are probably not just a modesty discussion, but like it's a life discussion. But I feel like even in this issue, which depending on your context can be more or less, I guess, controversial. Hope that like by presenting both sides, you're able to see, okay, there are thinking people on both sides of this issue who have reasonable points, and then you can move forward into having like healthy dialogue about it. Cool. So that's that. So thus far, we've covered how not to find a spouse. Part one is sex appeal is not how you find a spouse. Whether it's like choosing someone because of how sexy they are or trying to get chosen by how sexy you are, neither of those is a good point, because objectification and the fact that that sexiness has an expiration date. You will not look like that forever. The next one we're going to deal with has to do with this, being needy. So this is the next assignment. It's in the participation category, needy BF/GF. Do you think it's good or bad if the person you are dating needs you? Always immediately there's a question. What do you mean by need? Define it however you want to define it. Explain your reasoning. Is it good or bad if that person needs you? Go. Okay. Hopefully you did that. You paused this and went back, came back. Point 2 on how to not find someone to marry, or how not to find someone to marry, is based on need. When we say that someone is needy, I think that comes with some connotations. It's a little different than saying to need, because like even like a debate about what it is that we need can like go down all sorts of rabbit trails. Like, do we really need relationships at all? Do we really need water? Do we really need air? Like, I mean, we can just choose the diet. Do we need to stay alive? So we can go down a lot of rabbit trails. But I think that we all kind of have an image in our head when we say that someone is needy. And I think when we say someone's needy, what we're pointing to is that person's well-being, that person's, I guess, ability to function and survive and have happiness is fully dependent on you. And like, if we go all the way back to the beginning of Sacred Marriage, you probably remember that there's this analogy about a 486 computer and how it's insufficient. Like that having a 486 computer is not powerful enough to like provide your deepest desires, to meet those deepest needs. And so I think that we already know we're on a fool's errand if we're trying to meet our deepest needs by another person. But I think that there's some other pitfalls of choosing a partner or finding a partner because you need one. And it goes back to the very beginning where we distinguish different types of like. There's need like and appreciative like. I don't know if you remember this, like a cool glass of water on a hot day is a need like, versus art. Viewing a work of art would be an appreciative like. So need love, if we're talking about people, we're saying that they require desire and need. Things like, I need a girlfriend. I need someone to hold me. You know what? When I go to the movies, when movie theaters open again, I just need someone to sit next to me and hold my hand. Or, man, after like a really hard day, I need a special someone to talk to that can make me feel better. That's need love. And you'll notice that it's not that like Susie is special or Lily is something that like is really beautiful in this world, or Hank. We don't have a Hank. Hank is someone who's like a really substantial human being that like I love for who he is. Like it's not that type of like appreciative. It's just like I need a girlfriend. I need a boyfriend. I need someone to hold my hand. And it's just like a blank space. Like think like Taylor Swift should be playing in your head right now, that there's a blank space and you just got to put someone in it, right? And then like they meet that need, but it's irrelevant who's there. It's just like about getting your need met and having someone drop in there. Whereas appreciative love is like you love that person because who they are. You think that they're amazing and you appreciate them because they're beautiful, because they like, and not just like superficially beautiful like we were just talking about, but like they're a beautiful human, that you care about that person because of all of these amazing things about them. And because of that appreciation, you want to be closer to them. See how those are different? One, like with need love, it's like I have a lack, and so let's just like grab whatever I can and drop it into that lack. With appreciative love, you first observe and you're like, wow, like that's an amazing human being. I need to know more about that. And then that draws you into a relationship with them. So I would say that need love is probably a terrible way to go about finding a spouse. Because if you're using that, then it's not really about the person. It's about meeting your own needs, and finding some mutually beneficial agreement versus, wow, what an amazing person. I would like some more of that in my life. Like that. Now, there is the assumption is that when we talk about objectification, it's like all about like sexuality and how a person looks and turning people into pieces of meat. But if you think about it, even relationships can be objectifying things, like needing to have someone's hand to hold and stroll along a wooded pathway can become just another piece of meat. Like they just happen to be the hand that I'm holding. They're the body that's next to me. They're the person who I get to put like hearts after their name in my contacts. Like whatever it is, like even if it's not something that is like about like their like even if it's not like objectification in like the traditional sense that most people think of, like with sexuality, it can still be objectification because you've reduced that person to just a thing that meets your needs. Even if your needs are, I want a relationship, I want a boyfriend, I want a girlfriend. So here's the paradox of need, though. The paradox meaning, like, you know how there's two like contradictory ideas that are both true. The paradox of need is this, that if you seek someone because of need, oftentimes you kind of objectify that person. But then if instead of need love, you use appreciative love, if you find someone that you appreciate, what it does is it reveals an undiscovered need. And I would actually say that this is true of my wife and I. Like neither of us, like she would attest to this very like heartily, that like if she had her list of what she was looking for in a husband, I was not, like I didn't meet hardly any of those criteria, except for maybe that I was a Christian. When like she had her ideals of like what she was looking for in a person, like I didn't meet those needs, right? Like she had perceived needs of what she needed in a husband, and I wasn't that. And the same way, like Katie was not my like typical type. She wasn't like the type of person that I would normally go for. But what happened is like we ended up like developing an appreciation for each other, like because of bunch of random circumstances that landed us like talking to each other. But through that appreciation, we were like, wow, this is another amazing, beautiful human being. And because of that, we discovered that like maybe I need things that like I didn't even know that I needed. Like maybe my list of things that like I'm like I need this, 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 and this in a spouse, like I was totally off. I needed something different. And I discovered it through appreciating this other human being that like was totally off the radar for me. Right? So there's like a paradox that like even if, yes, like if you're just trying to achieve need fulfillment, then you're turning a person into an object. But if you appreciate a human for who they are, oftentimes it reveals needs in you that they end up fulfilling anyway. So that's pretty cool. Here's your exit ticket then, because here's what we've established. Two of the like main ways that I feel like people go about finding romantic partners is like, I really want to have a boyfriend or girlfriend, or wow, they are attractive. If we remove those two and we're like, okay, that's not the way that you're supposed to go about doing it, then how do you go finding a spouse? So here's how I worded it. If sexual prowling or luring and neediness are not good ways to go about finding a spouse, what is a good and healthy way to discover the person you ought to marry? Be sure to read classmates' responses and affirm good answers. Let's see. Let's test the collective wisdom of our Bible 12 class to see how much goodness you got in there. So again, just a couple of reminders. Make sure that you're working on that marriage interview. Basically, on Wednesday, everything in this entire class is due. So make sure you've done your marriage interview. Make sure that you listened. Go back in time and tell yourself to listen to class. And then you'll be good for our final little quiz on Wednesday. That's all I got for you. Hope you guys have a wonderful Monday. Bye.